Okay, so let me go through a couple terms. Oh, that was one question I wanted to ask on the pool is what kind of terrain you guys are hunting. So let me take you over to the Pennsylvania game lands where I spend a lot of my time. Okay. And out here, I use some different terminology. So you might hear me say things like hollows and draws and things like that. This doesn't always apply to your farm country. So this hodgepodge of pins is around my hunting cabin, and I should clean them up, but they all mean a little something to me. Okay. So I'll just come up here where it's a little bit less chaotic. All right. And this is actually a great little example right here. So we call this place, and forgive my forgive me if I shouldn't say something like this, but we call this the titties. Okay, I hope you guys can see why we call it that. This feature, okay, of land, it's just ironic that we have these little pockets of trees here. Okay, but if you look at these two circles that come together, what this actually is a terrain feature where we have this 2100 line, okay, and it goes all the way around, and there's no other thick, bold line. So that tells me that it remains less than 100 feet up, knowing that the next bold line is 100 feet down to this area, okay? So it's a relatively flat area. And then when you follow this feature here, you can see all these tight lines here, all right? So that would be what you would call a draw or a hollow or a valley, okay? But what this actually makes up is a saddle feature in the mountain, all right? Here is another prime example of a place where e-scouting does not always do you justice. So where we're seeing all this like open area, okay, what that actually is a clear cut. And for those of you that hunt public mountain land, a clear cut is a really great food source for animals. It can provide great cover, and it's something that you should not overlook when you are mountain hunting. All right. When you look at the topography map, and I don't know about you guys, but I can see the terrain much easier. You can see this is nice and flat, this big area with less lines compared to these draws. Onyx does a nice job with the shading and shadowing to help you see that. So if I run my mouse down this line right here, okay, what I would call that would be a spine. And you guys might have different terminology for that, but I would call that a spine of a mountain. It comes down to a point, okay? So these points right here are something really good to key in on whitetails. This right here, and with the, like I said, with the shadowing, it really can help. This is more of a gut or a gully, okay? I wouldn't call it, you could call it a ravine even a draw. So I tend to use different terminology with my circle of hunting friends. I think that we tend to understand each other pretty good. I consider this a big hollow. This is really big and open in here, okay? Getting back to here where I call it the titties though, we'll go back to the hybrid, okay? And you can see where they had cleared up, all right? Now it doesn't look far. Let me get where are my tools at on here? All right, so from this particular spot, this pin right here was where we parked, all right? And to get an approximate idea of how far back we're going, we can use a line tool. And I'll just give you guys a little example, but right when you get to about there, oh, does this give me yeah, right there. Do you guys see that point? It's about 0.8 miles, all right? So you're walking almost a mile back just to get to this tip of this clear cut, all right? And what do we find out when we got there? What we found out when we got there was it was all fenced in. So there was no wild game coming in and out because the foresters had put fences up so that area could regenerate. So on the map, it looked like a great opportunity for game, and it turned out that they weren't really in there. I can tell you from experience, as you see my trail continues on, I've hunted back here quite a bit and kept going past there. It was full of grouse and different things like that, so they can fly in and out real easy, okay? I will show you actually where I have these pins. So this is an area that I've spent a little bit of time in, and I really want to explore some more of these areas. But what happened here is when I came in to check out this saddle, all right, we have, again, like that kind of that boot feature where we have like a circle here and a circle here, and these tight lines. We have a nice saddle. The first time I sat at this spot, and I don't know what year these say on them, 2018, October 5th. So this was the first, and this, guys, this is a great thing to do. Make sure that you are marking your pins and labeling them. It's going to really help you out big time. So October 5th, buck scrape. So I saw this scrape, and I had set up right here, and I actually saw a really beautiful shooter buck. It just so happened that that day I was like in this rare mood. It's the beginning of archery, and I shouldn't say rare. I think I've seen this pattern in myself a lot, where I get in my head. I want to take a traditional bow. So I have my Fred Bear recurve 2 miles back this path, and I'm sitting there, and there's not a snowball's chance in hell I'm going to shoot that buck at 35 yards, making a scrape, because I have a traditional bow. So I took note of that and decided to set up the next day. So I had put a camera up there, and I had tried sitting at a couple different spots here. They're not all marked, but if you look at the terrain feature here, okay, that's a saddle where a deer can come up and cross over and cut down. It also serves as a pinch point. So if you see here, there's another saddle that comes together, okay? And on the backside of this knob, if a deer were to come through, it creates a tight area. So I like to find convergences like that to hunt. What I want to do this year is I want to actually go a little bit further and explore for food sources out here where it's much more flat. And you can really see that on the topo. We have big flat knob here, okay? And this happens to have a lot of oak trees, which seasonally it changes every year, where, you know, some years there's more fruit or acorns than others. Torn and I are going to be getting into that a lot. He's got an extensive knowledge with biology, and I'm looking forward to him sharing some of that information and even helping me out with what the deer like to eat. But in the northern part of Pennsylvania, you can't go wrong if you can find a good white oak crop, or if you can find beech nuts. If you look at my maps, I don't really have any tree sources marked. So that's something really good to key in on, okay? So let me fly back over here. Here's the spot closer. This is the main road right here, okay? And if I put the hybrid back on, you can probably even see it. When I say main road, this is a mountain road. It's dirt, all right? But it's a place that people can travel, okay? So here's a spot that I have marked right on the inside of this road and this trail that I showed you that I could access, all right? So where I have this pin marked right here, if you look close, okay, and attention to detail is really important, you will see that these trees here look darker, all right? When you actually go there in reality, this is a really thick, I'd say 10, 15, maybe 20-year-old stage of growth. It's probably in the 15, 20-year range of growth, okay? Really thick. That holds animals. When they get pressured, it gives them a place to go, okay? And from the road here, all right, this is nice and open. In fact, we did a drive during bear season, and we pushed. We had guys sat in this hollow where they could see, and we had guys wrapped around and pushed this out. I don't believe we had any luck in there, but we saw a lot of deer sign, and the bear are tricky. I'll tell you, that's a whole different topic. But I chose this point right on the edge of this thick growth because there's no way I was going to walk through that to get set up. But we're on the outside edge, and if you notice, these contour lines come out to a point here, okay? And the way I set up is where I had a good vantage point to see both ways, all right? So what you need to think about with big woods deer hunting is, escape routes, vantage points, things like that. So you need to get in, like, just get into the head of your of a whitetail or the deer, and think about their needs. They have a couple basic needs. They need shelter. They need food. They need a place that they can lay down. That they have food, that they can escape. When you're on a small point like this, they can escape. Okay. Something that's just as important as hunting an area like this, though, is approaching it. So to get into this spot, the easiest thing to do would be park here and then walk down the hill and then walk up and get situated. This is a tricky spot to hunt, though, because we have a lot of terrain features going on. Okay. And when you're in the mountains and you have, from down at the bottom here, it's 1,600 feet to right up here, it's 19. There's 300 feet of vertical elevation over that span. And what happens is in the afternoon, when the sun's up in the air, it starts filling this valley floor up with warm air. And as you guys know, heat rises and heat will start pushing up. And that heat pushes up and that starts carrying and pulling scent up through. Okay. So this little draw right here, this is something you have to get in there and do some checks with wind indicators. So take your milkweed, take your, and you can use the little powder stuff. I found milkweed works really good. Fourth Arrow, I think Glowwolf Custom Gear now has one. They have like a e-cigarette that isn't a puffer. So the puffer basically, it's kind of like taking a puff on an e-cig, and then you have that smoke vapor goes up, and that really carries nicely with the wind. But you got to watch what that's doing, because if you're set up on a knob like this and you think they're going to be working the edge of that thick stuff where they have good cover, they have browse, you got to watch that your scent's not blowing up to where they could be coming out of. Okay. Like I said, for the purpose of e-scouting, and this is the intro, I want to cover just a lot of how to access terrain, how to read signs, and just make sure that you guys understand you still got to get boots on the ground. Okay. Let's zoom out here and let's shoot over to, let's go to Missouri. How's that sound? I had a lot of fun the last 2 years in Missouri. Different pace of hunting. It's frustrating to talk to guys that know me really well know I spend majority of my time on public land. I'm all for food plots and different stuff like that. I don't do them. I like the challenge of the hunt, but there's definitely something to having private land and putting your plots in and doing that, and props to you if you do that stuff. I got real lucky to get to hunt the northeast corner of Missouri the last 2 seasons. Just kind of fell into being at the right place at the right time to meet some guys that got the invite. And essentially what they have is 4 different properties. So we get to draw straws and hunt these properties. We do have a couple food plots that the guys are from Missouri for the most part that are on the lease. And we do have the luxury that we have a couple food plots that they get to check cameras for us. But three of the properties are just cattle properties. Okay. And you'll be able to see this when I start to zoom in. Again, if you're looking online, you're on Basecamp leasing, you're like, oh, I want to get a lease. You got to do your homework, and it pays to if it's a new type of ground. If you're from Pennsylvania like myself and you come out to the Midwest, this looks totally different. Okay. And a lot of times you can tell if it's a cow pasture by looking versus crop fields. Okay. So crop fields, a lot of times you can actually see the patterns for the crops. So like down here, we zoom in and you can see there's something that was planted there in rows. Okay. This looks like it was a wheat field or beans or something that was planted. All right. We get into this green stuff here, and that's cow pastures. And there you go. You can zoom in. Oh, it's farm equipment. Sometimes you can zoom in, you can see the actual cows. Okay. So let me go up and I'll actually show you my spot here. And I'll tell you guys a little story. Get this load up. So let's see. Okay. So here's a particular spot that we have access to hunt. Let me see where my Missouri hunting layers are. Where we at? Okay, so here we're hunting private land. All right, you guys can see the layout of this property. I love this property. Neighbors probably hate it because it is in the shape of a plus sign. So we get a little bit of best of both worlds all over the place. That being said, you don't know how each neighbor is going to approach property, that they manage things or whatever else, and you got to deal with that. Okay, but it gives us a little bit of flavor. So you'll see right here, this is the gate access. Okay, when you're on private property, you gotta listen to what the farmer says or whoever gives you the permission to hunt there, and use the access the way that they allow. All right, does not mean you can't park your truck at a certain spot that they allow and enter the woods from a different place. So keep that in mind. So as you can see, this looks pretty flat. Now, mind you, we're in Missouri, okay? So this 750 that drops down to 700, that's still some good terrain, guys. So again, you got to get boots on the ground. So out here in Missouri, though, in all of this green here, right, all the way down to this road, this is all cow pasture. All right, you can actually see some of the color lines. What the farmers will do is they'll put fences up from time to time, and they'll close off an area, let that green up, and then they'll let the cows back in there. So again, that stuff will change. All right. So when we're out hunting this past season, this was gated off. There was no cows in here. All right. So it makes for these finger points to be real nice. At this spot right here, one of the stand locations that we have with the lease is up against the fence line, and it's looking out over this kind of mixed bag of things. This yellow, this is a box blind for gun hunting where you can see out and around. Okay. So if you take a look here, you'll see there's a lot of stands in this hardwoods right here. Okay. And I really liked this hardwoods. It's real thick. You can't see more than 30 yards to shoot. Ton of deer sign, ton of turkeys. Just a really good spot. But it's almost impossible to go there and to hunt it. If you guys have ever seen pin oak leaves, they're so crunchy when they don't get a lot of sunlight on them. They just pile up forever. They don't break down. It is so hard to get in there without blowing deer out because they live in there. All right, it's good cover. There's this little terrain stuff here. That's actually a really nice knob that they can lay on where they don't get seen. So if you notice here, I had a stand. I did a hang and bang mobile setup in this draw where I could myself see out much better. Okay. I spent a little bit of time in there. I knew there was a good buck, 140 class buck, and I just couldn't get him to play ball. So down here in the south end of the property, all right, cow pasture stops right here. Okay. And we have a creek edge. So it's like, what more can you ask for? Because during the rut, creek bottoms are awesome. Okay. As you'll see, we chose to put a stand on this inside corner here. That way, if a deer is following through, a mature buck is probably not going to walk out into the middle of the field. He's going to probably be pinched down. So we didn't want to have the stand smack dab in the middle of where it gets really tight, because you start choking off where they're at. You put ground scent out, and you're going to really start to mess up your hunting. Okay. This point right here, this is the story I wanted to share with you guys. And I have not shared this story yet. I wish I had my pictures up that I could share. I'll tell you what, I probably, let me see here. If you guys have a property that you hunt a lot, I love this. It is a Hunt Terra is the company. It's very expensive. It's a couple $100. I got this big magnetic sign at my cabin. Let me pull this up, where I can put pins. So here we're putting pins talking about drives, but we can actually put movable pins in the areas that I hunt. So if you look up I guess it's cropped off where the spot we call the titties is, but yeah. So let me see if I can find, all right, where did my thing go? Torn, if you can text me, did that, you can still see that on that pan over, correct? Okay, let me see. I want to share this stuff just to share a couple points with you. And I don't even think I got this. I've been wanting to podcast about this topic. So you guys are getting to hear something that hasn't been talked about yet. But back to Missouri here, it's going to pan over. This red pin, keep that in mind. Okay, if you guys can see that, and I'm telling you right now, when you get boots on the ground, it is totally different. So that red pin that I just showed you, okay, that red pin, and actually it's probably over just a hair from there, okay, but that pin is literally, we're looking out from that field edge, okay? And what I did is, this is a really cool story. So in Missouri, every night we get to draw cards, and my dad unfortunately got sick and had to go home from the hunt. He had to leave early. And I hadn't drawn a high card all week. So it's the last night of my hunt. I told my wife, I said, listen, since my dad's not there, I'm not making that 16-hour drive home on my own. I said, I'm gonna hunt Monday morning. I'm gonna drive halfway. And then I said, I'll get back Tuesday, and then I'll be back in time for the afternoon shift in the office to see some patients. And as you guys know, that hardly ever works out. So Monday, I got up real early, and I brought in a Millennium tree stand. I wanted something comfy. I knew I had some driving to do, so here's the stand, okay? And so I got the Catalyst outdoor sticks right there from Brady, all right? The service side logo, just 2 of them, right? And I put this up in the dark. I'm right on this fence line. So the night before, I drew the ace, I guess it was ace of spades. I took a picture of it. I was so pumped, and I sent it to my dad. And I said, Dad, I said, where should I go? I said, this is what I'm thinking. Ace of clubs. Yeah, here it is. This is cool. And I texted the ace of clubs and said, I got first pick. I said, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think that I do? We agreed. We're looking. So we had all these different points on Onyx, and we had talked about, hey, down here, we're seeing deer and stuff, but nobody has touched this block of timber. And I'll tell you right now, it's pretty open. This is cow pasture, right? If you were to walk through it, you wouldn't want to hunt there anyway. But I had noticed, looking down some of these little openings, some big buck rubs, and we had taken notice of some deer activity. I'm like, there's literally no human pressure in here, but I don't know how to hunt it, okay? So it's rifle season, and it's my morning. So I set up a hang and bang set right on this point, because I had talked about going over here to watch this corner, and we looked at what the wind was doing, and the wind was blowing straight out that way, okay? And as you see, there's nothing over there. So I said, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. So I parked my truck. I walked down through this gut where I knew I was hidden. I came down, I hopped this fence. I walked down through the middle of the field. I wanted to leave as minimal scent as I could. I wanted to be out of the sight of deer as much as I could, because it's pitch black dark, they're out there foraging. I got set up, and I set up those 2 sticks. I set up the stand. And once daylight emerged and things woke up, it wasn't long off where I saw a deer right over in this corner, right where I wanted to set my stand. And I'm like, all right, that's a good sign. And within a few minutes, I saw movement in this green, and there was a doe, and her tail was standing straight out. I said, well, that's a good sign. She's probably in heat. And it was at that point that this buck stepped out, and as you can see, this was a very calculated thing, okay? And this is where e-scouting is going right. All right, I had to do a 200-yard shot from that Millennium stand off of my knee. So let me see if I can share this picture. And if you guys are my friends on Instagram, you've seen it. But I shot 136 class whitetail, and I was pretty pumped about that. So had all kinds of character. So Midwest buck didn't have the big spread and stuff like that, but there you can see I was in the stand. He was out in that opening. Actually, it was over here, and it worked out. And that was 100% basing it on, okay, this whole knob hasn't been touched. We know there's activity. I just want to be able to see that. And guys, mind you, rifle season that opened on Saturday. It's Monday. So I knew that this, like the guys at camp were like, dude, you got first pick and you're going to sit open over a cut bean field. Like, that's what I'm going to do, you know? And it ended up working out awesome. So Torrin, I don't know. I never told you that whole story, did I?
No, you didn't.
Yeah, so we'll have to talk about that on a podcast in the future. But that was a place where I used my knowledge from details I had gathered, put that all into perspective, and it was 100% calculated. And I can tell you guys right now, if you can start putting together the data from e-scouting and put it into play, and then actually seal the deal, it's one of the best feelings out there, because when hunting starts becoming a game of chess, it can be a lot of fun. So, like I said, I really would like to cover more information about food sources and things like that. I'm gonna have Torrin pick up on that stuff at some other time. But for the purpose of what we're doing tonight, just know, make sure you're marking that information. If you know what that information is, just because you know the area, that's fine. But if you don't know and you're in there scouting and you see certain trees, mark that and go back to it. Because there's two ways to kill a buck. You can through his pecker or through his stomach, and that's the reality. You got to know what they're eating. You got to know where they're bedding, and if they're breeding, that's when the travel corridors and stuff come into play.